Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey Neat, spirited conversations with interesting people. I'm your host, Christopher Hart. This week I sit down with, and this is going to be a mouthful, and I've been drinking, so bear with me here, high proof stuff, Todd Grube, Director of Operations for the Houston office of a global law firm, I'm not allowed to say which one, and Mike Salopek, the project manager for exploration life support systems on the International Space Station. That's right, guys. We have our second NASA guy here on the show, and we didn't talk about it at all.
We did a little bit. I could probably talk about it.
I need to have you back on with Steve, and we can talk. Awesome. It'd be an incredible episode. Steve Platts, for those who remember that early episode 5, 6, something in there. Mike is a good friend of mine. He's been in the Houston Bourbon Society since damn near the inception. And Todd is a more recent, about a year?
Yeah.
About a year. So. But we recently, along with 2 other guys, went on a trip to Kentucky to pick out barrels for the group. And today's episode is not with a brand. It's with people who love whiskey. This is essentially a roundtable, a bourbon community of sorts. Shout out to Kenny Coleman and the Bourbon Pursuit podcast. But we basically just got back from this trip, and so we just wanted to talk about what we picked, why we picked it, what's unique about what we did. This isn't just a standard bourbon trip. This was an exceptional experience that went above and beyond anything we expected. So, couple things. The Houston Whiskey Social is on sale. I've talked about it for a few weeks now. It is March 30th. Check it out at HoustonWhiskeySocial.com. You can also peep out our Instagram account or what's going on Facebook to kind of see what's being added to the lineup daily. We talk a little bit on this week's episode about how we grabbed a few things that were for the Kentucky market only while we were there last week to feature at the event. So you can come and you can taste Larceny Barrel Proof. We picked out a few things that you can only get at the Whiskey Social, or if you live in Kentucky. So it was a pretty fun trip overall. We came back with, this is how much I came back with. I had to go to FedEx and box up everything that wasn't whiskey and mail it back to myself. So clothes, shoes, my bathroom bag, my luggage wouldn't hold everything, so I had to mail back everything that wasn't important. Also, we've talked about shirts. The shirts have been designed. They will be on sale soon at mywhiskeyneat.com. People say, why My Whiskey Neat when the show's called Whiskey Neat? That's because I like my whiskey neat. But we designed a shirt that's similar to what you're wearing, Jack, and I know you guys can't see this, but it has got our logo on it, and it says, "Drinking before noon is my job." So it's a shout out to the show and the fact that we normally record this around 10 a.m. So not today, but generally speaking, 10 a.m. We will have shirts available in every size up to 2XL. And but we're doing a short run here. This will be very limited, and they're going to run about 25 a piece. So those shirts will be available soon, assuming that when they come in, they're in perfect shape. And then I think that's it. Oh, the show is going to be available on Spotify and iHeartRadio soon. So there's lots of changes coming to the show over the next few months. It's been a overwhelmingly positive. What's the word I'm looking for? The show's done pretty well, and so we've got listeners in over 40 states, and we track pretty well in other markets. So we're going to be expanding where the show is going to be available in 2019. Spotify, iHeartRadio, and some other things I can't talk about until they're finalized. But things are really good. So check out the show at mywhiskeyneat.com. Of course, please, guys, if you've got iTunes, give us a rate and review. Let people know that the show is worth listening to. And if the show is garbage, in your opinion, please let me know, and I'm more than happy to take the feedback and change the show as needed. I think that covers everything, yeah? Without further ado, my friend Mike Salopek and Todd Grube from the Houston Bourbon Society. Cheers. Have you tried any of the Mattingly products?
No, this will be my first time.
What's the story with that one again?
So essentially, you guys know the old Baldy story?
No.
So Ed Bly was in charge of Cork and Bottle for a long time. Now, he before you taste it, let me give the backstory. He got with Bourbon 30, Jeff Mattingly's place, and did a private blend of, I want to say it was 6 barrels, 5 barrels, something like that. It ended up being like 300 bottles, all cask strength, and he called it Old Baldy, his first own label with his name on it. It was such a success. They released the second one in a more Pappy Van Winkle Willet style bottle with the white wax and the super luxurious label.
Those wax tops.
Yeah, so this was the original bottle design for the first one, and our private group project Cost Plus Shipping. It's a little small group that's national of like 200 people that we did our own blend as well. And I was actually not that big of a fan of Old Baldy 1 until I spent the evening with it. We were in Tennessee picking out Jack Daniels, and we just kind of drank through it all. And I really, really enjoyed it. And then I wasn't a fan of the second one, but I had only tried it once. I never came back to it. This, I think, is better than Old Baldy 1 and Old Baldy 2, but, the whole controversy with Bourbon 30 kind of blew up. And, so, yeah, it's a good portion of this is light whiskey. I want to say 11 or 13 years old. I'm butchering the details on it, but you go ahead and taste it now if you'd like. It's better than Old Baldy, in my opinion.
The color on it's really interesting.
Oh,
there's like sediment or something.
Yeah, it does look a little smoky.
The last time I drank out of this was with Dave Pickerel. This was the bottle we drank out of that episode with Sean Jackson.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty good.
So it's not bad. It's okay. It reminds me more of the first release of Little Book.
Yeah.
So it's got more of a not so much that bourbon sweetness, but kind of smells like corn whiskey.
A little bit, yeah.
Why is it cloudy? What is that from? It just seems a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I know it's raw and unfiltered. If you look, there's a tremendous amount of sediment in the bottom of the bottle. It's kind of like here, but there's only a third of it left.
Kind of reminds me of like iced tea almost. Like at the end of the pitcher you get some of the tea flakes down in there.
Right.
What it looks like to me. It's interesting.
The group is awesome. I've been in Project Cost Plus Shipping for a long time. It's a really great group of guys. Casey Sue's an admin on it, if you know Casey. Some Dallas guys, Raymond Taylor, Paolo Tang. So there's a lot of Texas guys. A lot of Houston guys are in it. William Mancia, Logan Boatwright, like all the Charu's in it too. Ben Songer. Yeah. It's kind of like a very Houston, even though the group is not specifically Houston. But by the way, thanks for coming on the show today, guys.
Great to be here.
I know we kind of cold started there.
Yeah.
But so for those of you who don't know, we just got back from an exhausting trip in Kentucky, and I'll cover this in the introduction. But our group, the Houston Bourbon Society, we go and we make trips up to Kentucky. We did 3 this year, and in those 3, we picked out at least 5 barrels each time, I think. The trip we did in June, so the January trip was 5 barrels. The June trip may not have been. I think it was
you guys did Makers.
We did Makers in 1792.
Yeah.
And I think that might have been – no, but we also we went to go pick out we picked out 2 barrels of Makers. Okay. And 1 barrel of 1792. So 3 barrels, and then this trip we picked out 8.
So we're the winning trip then.
We're
the best number one.
You're the best number one. I mean, definitely the most we've extended ourselves in terms of credit goes.
we may have been plied with a little bit of booze.
So, and you're only seeing a portion of this on the table. We're gonna go over everything this episode, but we go up there. For those who don't know, how these barrel picks work, which I'm sure most of our listeners do. You make a trip up to Kentucky. You go through, visit distilleries. You kind of cram a lot into a 3-day period because we all have day jobs and families. And you just go distillery after distillery. So flew in late Tuesday night. Wednesday, we did Four Roses. We did
Four Roses and Barrel.
Yeah. Four Roses and Barrel on Tuesday, yeah. So that's a total of 5 barrels. Now, Barrel, okay, that's a little confusing. There's a company called Barrel that spells its name a little differently. And then, so we did Four Roses at 1, Barrel at 4. then 2 barrels, and that's 5 barrels that day. Then we did 2 barrels of Copper and Kings brandy, which we're going to talk about shortly. Joe texted me the info on it. Yeah, there it is. And the last day we did Boone County, which was a bit shaky, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. Mm-hmm. So we're just going to kind of go over what is coming to Houston, what we expect to be here. And for those of you who are not in Houston or Texas, no less, let you know what's available coming up that I think you're going to be excited about from those brands. So we picked out a couple of 13-year-old rye barrels from Barrel that were
killer.
Just awesome killer. Stuff. So first time they've done old rye. They did a couple of young ryes the last couple of years, batch 1, batch 2, mm-hmm. which I think were like 2-year, 3-year rye.
Mm-hmm. I haven't had those.
Yeah. They're fairly young. These are 13 years old, and then we did 2 barrels of 14-year-old bourbon. So we have lots to drink, lots to try today, and lots to talk about. So let's get started. I'm definitely interested. So I'll tell you a little bit about Todd. Todd Grube is what would be your official title? Office director, business director?
Director of operations for a law firm.
Here in Houston. And Mike works for NASA. So if you guys remember about 20 episodes ago, we did an episode with Steve Platts, the famous Steve Platts, the deputy director of the Human Research Program at NASA.
Yeah, so my job title is not that exciting sounding. It's ISS Vehicle Integration. Basically, I'm a project manager for the ISS. We're doing some new flight experiments
for those
life
who
support
are
systems.
Ignorant to what ISS means.
International Space Station.
Yeah,
that's right.
I think that sounds pretty cool.
It's up there. We have people living in space. They've been up there for, since 2001. We've had people living in space continuously.
I remember distinctly being in junior high. I like very vivid memories of the layout of my junior high. I remember there being posters of the International Space Station up. And yeah, so you say that again, project manager of vehicle integration?
Vehicle integration is my official title. I'm kind of more like a project manager. I do requirements, budget, kind of represent the International Space Station program priorities for what we're trying to go build from a hardware perspective. So right now we're looking at upgrading a bunch of life support equipment for when we go beyond low Earth orbit. We have stuff up there that works pretty good, but it breaks down all the time. And obviously you don't want your water processor and your oxygen generator to break on a trip to Mars when you can't get any resupply. So we're upgrading that stuff.
If you guys haven't seen that episode, I'd encourage you to go back to I should have looked at that episode beforehand. But we discussed the idea of the next step for that would be to build another station around the moon would be the launching pad. So right now we're in low Earth orbit, if you could say that 5 times fast after high proof whiskey. And then they plan to actually sell that off to a private company, and then the moon would be the next launching pad into space, and then go from there, which is pretty just
That's right.
mind-boggling. I'm over here drinking on a show on Facebook, so I feel like I made some life decisions that were not so great.
I don't know. I mean, after visiting those distilleries, I think those guys have the best job in the world.
Yeah,
my job's pretty cool, but
that's my retirement job.
Yeah.
I'll go there and sweep the floors.
Right.
That's what they need.
I'll be a hospitality, whatever, show people around specialist. Yeah, whatever they're called.
It was really good seeing Drew again, Drew Pomeroy over at Copper and Kings. That is probably one of the most – now, it's one of those things that when you do make pilgrimages – it sounds wrong to Kentucky, right, that you every experience is mind-boggling. We had such a fantastic time at Four Roses, and we'll start there. I don't have a sample of what we picked at Four Roses, but we had a phenomenal time visiting the woman that handles the barrel program at Four Roses. Her name is Mandy Vance. She's awesome, her and Dan Gardner, he's a regional manager for Four Roses. They just invited us in, and we just sat and talked and drank through barrel after barrel. And
we did 7, I think.
So there's 10 recipes, and 3 of them were not available. And the way that works is the OESO, OESK, there's a couple of recipes every year that they just don't make enough of, especially enough that would be great in a single barrel. And so what they do is they offer a handful of those up to charities first. So if you guys are familiar with the barrel program at Four Roses, let's say there's 5 of a particular recipe that's not widely available. Those get put into charity tastings when those charity companies come to pick out barrels. And if they pass on them, then they stay in the rotation until someone grabs them. If they don't, then or if they grab them, then we pick through just the 7 that is available. So we had a great time. We narrowed down quite a bit. We ended up
fairly in agreement.
Fairly in agreement. So
a little touch and go there for a few.
So typically so let's discuss the bullshit that is barrel programs. There's this in the ether, the arrogance of the bourbon community. There's this belief that this is going to be an opinionated episode. I'm going to say what I think.
Yeah.
There's this belief that you have to have these iron palates and that these special crews go through and they handpick a beautiful. That is the romance behind a barrel program, is that you want to find something unique and special that's different than what's on the shelf. You don't always. Let's try that again. You don't always succeed at that, but you try, and that's the goal. And it's really not that hard to achieve that. So, in my opinion, and Wade has said this too, Wade was a part of this real famous group called 1792B. And they're known for picking these phenomenal barrels. And he said that there were plenty of times where we went and picked something, and when it came back, we're like, well, this isn't as great as we remember. So you're picking through what is offered to you. When we walk into Four Roses, we're picking from what is already they already rolled those out.
Yeah, there were 7 barrels laying out.
How do they pick them? Do they sample and decide these are barrels we're going to put out?
So that is how it works. Like if you're familiar with Eagle Rare last year or 2 years ago that the Whiskey Lodge did or the Poison Girl did here in Houston. I always forget with Buffalo Trace because I'm not a huge Buffalo Trace. I mean, it's good. I like it, but I'm not like a fanboy that I know every aspect of it. And I believe Eagle Rare's Mash Bill won at Buffalo Trace. And what they do is it's tasted to profile. So when they go through and they taste through what they say, okay, this is unique. It's different than the typical bottling. This will be for the barrel program. They set it aside.
Okay.
And if they taste one that's Mash Bill 2, but it tastes really, really close to what they want Eagle Rare to be, they'll pull that aside. Oh, wow. So whereas officially all Eagle Rare is Mash Bill 1, you'll get a few single barrels a year that are Mash Bill 2. And they're usually people tend to flip out about it. Like, oh, this is
There's nothing on the bottle that indicates that, right?
Nothing on the bottle, but it's on the barrel.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the barrel. So essentially, Four Roses does the same thing. They go through and they taste. They say, okay, this is really unique. We're going to set this aside for the barrel program instead of blending it off in a small batch or whatever. And what happens is they literally slot them, right? There's 10 slots, or in this case, 7 slots. Roll them all at 7. Once we picked one, they pulled that barrel out and slid another one in. So it's a matter of we are technically picking through 6 rejects and 1 new barrel. And now, if Spec sends some people up there or someone from a store, which happens all the time, that has no bourbon tasting experience, and they reject something that's fantastic, like that tobacco one that we picked, then it's different, right? So what happens is a lot of times you'll have the distiller just pick for you, and that's a real quick process.
Yeah. There's
no care put behind it. So we went through and we picked through 7, and we were really almost all of us liked this number 7, which was just this crazy tobacco note on it that was so unique and exceptional, but we thought it might not be appealing to the average consumer. So we set it aside and we focused on 2 that were more easy on the eyes. And we had plans to find a retailer locally that was already going to get one and just tell them to take this secret barrel.
This is my fear about the whole trip, because everything we picked, I feel like, is off profile and different. And I think we thought everything we picked was amazing. And I hope that everyone else feels the same when it comes back. That's the part when you say that, then it comes in and you think not quite what you remembered.
So again, what you're doing is you're tasting through and comparing them to each other.
Right. Yeah.
So let's just say theoretically you have, and I'm just going to give you an example, you have 8 shitty barrels of Wild Turkey. Sorry. not that there's any bad barrels of Wild Turkey, but let's just say that we're not up to snuff. And there's usually a limit where they cut you off. So you find the one that's the best of the 8.
Best of that one, yeah.
So when it comes back and you taste it compared to something, give you a great example is the Whiskey Redneck.
Right.
That was one sample. Gene did not have choices. And he didn't even like that one sample. When I gave him that sample,
selling him out here.
No. Gene's open about it. Gene's a phenomenal guy. So we gave Gene a sample and said, "Hey, look, I think it'd be great if you had your own barrel. Mm-hmm. You're a character." He was more of a character back then in the group. Now he kind of fluctuates in and out. But I said, "If you want this, you can have it." And he goes, "It's okay, but I'll take it." And now people love the whiskey. I mean, people talk about it in the group all the time. So that barrel has like a little bit of a legend behind it. So, and another thing that people do is they tend to compare it to other private picks. Those whole side by side is not really the goal of barrel picks. Barrel picks are generally the same price as shelf items if they have that same thing available.
Right.
Like Russell's Reserve is the same price no matter what. You want to beat the shelf item. You want a snowflake, an individual, a unique, something about it that sets it apart. We picked out this barrel that was very unique. But we thought might be a divisive indicator with the tobacco note. But when we go to pick on these, there's 4,700 people in the group.
Right.
There's going to be people who don't like what you pick, no matter what, even if it's a legendary bottling. There's going to be people who don't like it. As long as the consensus and people that you respect their palates like it, then you can feel better about it.
Yeah. So what was interesting though was like, when we come in, the 7 barrels were laid out. They were turnaround, so it was kind of cool. So they gave us the option: do you want to know what you're tasting, or do you want to go in completely blind? And we all decided we definitely want to go in completely blind because there's a lot of preconceived notions if you look at
with
the
recipes,
age, the recipes, the proof, right?
Which isn't going to be on the barrel.
Right.
But
now you could sort of maybe kind of tell the age because there was chalk lines on the barrels indicating its fill level. There was definitely one barrel that was a lot lower than the other
color
ones.
Of the barrels.
And the color of the barrel. Yeah, the ugly
right
barrel.
Away we liked the ugly one.
Yeah, we liked the ugly one right away.
That was the 7, right?
That was 3.
No, that was one of the ones that we eliminated right off the bat.
No. 3 was not one that we eliminated. 3, but I liked 3 when we first tasted it.
That's right.
And then we came through and we eliminated it because nobody had anything against it, but I'm glad we eliminated it because there was only going to be maybe 60 bottles in the barrel.
That's right. Yeah.
And I needed a lot more for the event.
You're right.
So we buy a barrel for the whiskey event every year. Jack, will you turn the timer back on? And we needed – this year we were expecting 100 bottles and we got 70, which wasn't enough.
Right.
So, in fact, Four Roses only ships in full 6-packs. So whatever – 72, 74, whatever equals six packs. So I was glad we ruled out 3 because if it had been like the favorite, it would have been very difficult to leave it behind. But 7 was the favorite, but we set it aside and tried to narrow down the other ones. So the process is usually to rule out the ones you don't like. Makes it easier to narrow down than to talk it through. And every trip I've been on, I've done a couple dozen of these. It all works the same. Everyone's almost all in a unanimous agreement. I mean, even with the rye barrels, we knew right off the bat that first one with a punched hole in it was like our favorite.
We got to try that, yeah.
It's not hard to narrow down if you got a group of 5 to 6 guys,
right?
Or people, women, whatever. It's not hard to narrow it down, and we did. The Four Roses, we ended up trying to pick between the 2 we thought would be more pleasing to the average person. And then at the end of it, we just said, screw it, and we took the tobacco barrel. So it was a great time. Four Roses was fantastic, and I knew it blew Adrian away. He kept saying how great it was. And then we went to barrel.
Oh, man.
And this episode is going to be very barrel heavy.
Yeah.
So
fact, is it time to
Yeah. Let's pour. So
I
barrel.
Can't wait to try it again.
Yeah. Is that our dump? Is that our dump glass there?
Yeah, that's your dump glass. Right. So you can dump that there. And God, I'm so thirsty. Barrel is not open to the public, and in fact, we got kind of a little bit of a controversy because the local distributor in Louisville, in Kentucky, was like, "Hey, we just asked them if we can go by, and they told us no, and they let us in." And if, as you guys remember from last week's episode when Will was on, I asked him on the show, which I don't know if he left that part in. I asked him on the show if we can come by, and he said yes.
And it's kind of hidden as well. In the parking lot, it's just a white door with lettering on it.
Yeah, it was like the sign was like this big or something.
It's at an industrial park
place.
Yeah.
And it was just a bunch of barrels in a warehouse, which was fantastic. So it was like a kid in a candy store. And they already lined up a bunch of 13-year-old rye barrels. And that's these here. So this is the one we picked for us, L947. I love that. It's tea leaves floating in the bottom. Let me see your glasses here. So this is 13-year-old rye, and most people assume Alberta or MGP, but this is 13-year-old Canadian rye, and it's neither. So whatever that means. The barrels these were in had Four Roses stamps on it. So 13-year-old rye aged in Four Roses barrels.
This has that apple.
Oh, yeah.
Crisp apple smell.
Crisp apple smell. Green apple.
Just as good as I remember.
Yeah. Cast strength 13-year-old rye. Wow. And here's the thing. Whistle Pig, huge rye brand, $70-$80 for a private pick, right? This is going to be the exact same. 13-year-old cast strength, unfiltered, just freaking.
It's just amazing. It's the apple note on the palate as well is strong. I mean, it's just I've never had a rye with that.
Never had a rye with that flavor.
I'll be honest. I don't think and I think I said this on the trip. I don't think I've got a palate for rye. I like ryes, but they're a bit palate confusing to me. I know what good bourbon tastes like. I know what good Scotch is, but I don't spend a lot of time with ryes. I know what I like and what I don't like, but I don't know if I have a good radar with ryes.
So my wife really likes rye. That's kind of her go-to. She likes the High West double rye. I really like Sazerac rye, like a regular everyday rye, but I like the high proof cast strength ryes. I mean, Pikesville. I mean, that's a great one.
You mentioned the Whistle Pig. I really enjoy the picks, the special Whistle Pig 10 picks.
Yeah,
they have a lot of variety too.
Yeah, and a lot of them are 13. But I think Nathan picked out a 14-year-old one recently. It's just it's very rare. I mean, nowadays to see an over 10-year-old rye for under $100 is very rare. So basically, we met Joe Beatrice, who was incredibly hospitable.
That guy was awesome. Yeah.
And they said it's not the first time someone has come by the distillery, but it's the first time someone from the industry came by the distillery that they didn't have to clear out their office because they do a lot of blending and a lot of proprietary stuff. And there's just all these bottles sitting around their office.
It's like a lab.
Yeah, it was like a lab.
Just like a lab.
I even took a picture with the microscope, science at work.
Oh, yeah. There's all these little samples and labels. And, I mean, he had spreadsheets.
That just looks – that's an awesome job.
Yeah.
To sit there and
dude.
Mix.
It's you talk about a nerd who, if you have I've always said if I won the lottery, I would start a distillery, a winery. I'd get a degree in psychology. Like, I would do all the things that it's clear he fell in love with whiskey and was like, all right, I'm going to do this full time. And the brand is doing fantastic. And I mean, we're getting old Canadian rye, and that's saying something.
Did we get the proof on this one?
Can we
guess?
We don't have the proofs yet. You can guess, and I'll run it by him. So this would be what, L947?
Because these were all because they mentioned that they had one that was over 140.
They had a hazmat one, and I really wanted the hazmat one.
For a rye is insane.
Yeah, that is insane.
I mean, they tend to be lower proof anyway, but I think it's in the high 120s.
Yeah. I would say it's like 122. I would say maybe 122.
It's definitely a lot of spice.
But yeah.
I'm seeing Wade later. I'm going to let him taste through this. I want him to kind of get his opinion on it.
You don't have a hydrometer here, man? Like,
nah, this is a real Bush League operation here. This is actually filmed. You guys don't know this, but it's filmed with an iPhone 4. So, so you think 120s?
Yeah.
I can ask him. Let's see here. We liked them so much that we went to pick out one barrel. We ended up buying 4.
And I think we would have taken all 4 of the rye barrels. I think that was the consensus.
We ended up taking 2, and somehow we ended up with a 3rd bottle, sample bottle. So Ryan's, for those who are Houston-based, Ryan's Liquor in Spring, one of the best liquor stores, mom-and-pop liquor stores in Houston. They have done everything they can to just bring cool stuff to the Houston market. I was like, dude, if you want a barrel for your store, you can have it. And he's like, absolutely. So we picked out a bottle for him. This was our second. There was 4 ryes that we tasted through, and we loved the first 2 so much that one's going to Bo's at Ryan's Liquor. His name's Bo at Ryan's. God, let's try that again. His name is Bo, and it's Ryan's Liquor in Spring. So we got a barrel going up there, and then we tried through 2 bourbon barrels. We actually tried through 4.
We tried through 4 or 5, I think.
Bourbon barrels, and one of them was like bursting at the seams and didn't taste like that Tennessee distillery that we often talk about. A lot of sourced bourbon comes from Tennessee, and it usually comes from one distillery, which is Dickel. Cannot confirm or deny that that's what this is.
Orange Flintstone Vitamins gives it away.
Yeah. But it didn't have the mineral note, and it was the most Kentucky bourbon profile that we tasted there.
That was very good.
And it was 14-year-old bourbon. It was awesome, so we had to grab it. And then Joe was like, I want you to taste my favorite barrel. And out of the lot, which there was a good 100, 200 barrels there.
Yeah, there was.
Joe's like, there's a particular barrel that he loved, and so he took us over there, and we tasted through it, and it was just.
Man, that one was killer.
It's just it was
cinnamon bomb.
Yeah, it was just cinnamon. So NASA, I think NASA Liquor's getting that one, right? So yeah, NASA Liquor's getting Joe's barrel, and that's on the south side. Another phenomenal mom and pop liquor store here in Houston that is just doing great things. In fact, NASA's one of the first, right? So there was a few stores in Houston that have been changing the whiskey game here for a long time, and NASA was definitely one of them. So we picked out a bourbon barrel for NASA, and then we got our own bourbon barrel and our own rye barrel. And then, I mean, it was just boom, 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 boom. So this is it here. This is our number one pick.
And I think, if I remember correctly, I mean, Joe's pretty much involved in tasting everything that they get, right? So it's not like they're just buying a bunch of barrels, just like, hey, broker, give me a bunch of barrels. I mean, he's being very discerning, which is why I think you could definitely taste the difference in their products, right? Like we got to try some phenomenal stuff, and it was so cool. I mean, Will's there. He's got the Barrel Thief. We're like, let's try that one over there. And he's like, okay, hang on. We got to move all this stuff out of the way, right? And we were worried about the one that was busted open because we had to move that one around a little bit.
Yeah, it looked like it was about to break. Yeah. So if I recall correctly, and I could be way off here, so give or take, but Will had said that Joe had tasted through a lot of 500 barrels. And picked like 20 that he liked.
Yeah,
His last lot was like 20 barrels that he liked, and the rest he just passed on. So, which I can tell you now that typically speaking, when you source a lot of barrels like through MGP, they give you one sample from that parcel. So, like at Boone County, he's like, we bought let's just say 100 barrels. Yeah. They got to taste one sample. And then they bought the whole, which is a representative of the entire lot, which is bizarre.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
And then they, when the barrels came in, there were actually several of them that were just empty.
Right.
So you pay a flat rate for the barrel, regardless of what's in it, which is different than what distilleries do. Distilleries charge you per bottle. So if the barrel yields 100 bottles, that's what you pay is 100 bottles. With brokers, when you source whiskey, it's not like that. You pay per barrel a flat rate. And if the barrel is empty, tough titty. Can you say titty on the radio?
We'll find out.
It's on that list of dirty words we talked about in Kentucky.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Which we confirmed.
When we could hear each other talking with DJ Chris over here blasting everything.
We were outside, right? No. The door was shut and we were outside.
Neighbors. I was real worried. I don't know.
Even when we were inside.
Yeah, even when we were inside. And then I couldn't find the way to turn down the volume on the thing.
Because you're an old man.
I am an old man.
So, we were fine. So
it was fine.
So we, at Barrel, we got then a pick of picks. So Joe picked barrels that he liked, and then we picked. I think it feels like that's why the quality is so good.
I think so too,
let's go back to how barrel picks work. So typically speaking, the myth behind barrels is that am I being loud? Coming through.
Barrels lowercase b,
is that you taste through what's being offered to you. Mm-hmm. We didn't have that option. We could pick through whatever we wanted. He literally said, pick a barrel. And so we got to explore what they had available. There wasn't like, here's 3 samples, pick from these 3 samples. No. It was, you've got carte blanche. Come through, taste what you like, find what you like, and let's go from there. And we tasted through, 9, 10 barrels. And out of the 10 we tasted through, we picked 4. And which means there's no excuse.
Right.
No.
If this comes through and it's bad, it's 100% our fault.
I think people are going to like this. I mean, this rye, is unlike anything that I've had. I mean, it's if you're looking for different, this is that. And not just different, it's just excellent.
Mm-hmm. There's a particular note in Whistle Pig that, to me, always screams Whistle Pig.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that at all. Mm-hmm. This is rye spice. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. Rye spice, apples, fresh green apples, almost like a baked Granny Smith as well. Like I get a little bit of that baked. My grandmother used to put brown sugar on Granny Smith apples and throw them in the oven, and I get a little bit of that baked green apple note. So we were so pleased, and it'll be the first one ever. They've never done this nationwide. So these 13-year-old rye barrels will be the first ever out of that warehouse, and we got to pick from whatever we wanted.
Yeah, so, that was fantastic. We kept them there pretty long, too, afterwards. I think they had a business meeting to go to that night. And then by happenstance.
We ran into at the restaurant, too. They couldn't get away from us.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal time. And we went in when it was daytime, came out, it was dark. We had no idea how much time had passed. The picture we took with you dripping in your mouth, this is this one.
This one smells like toasted marshmallows.
And that's the first time I got Gene's approval on a photo.
Oh, that's impressive.
He called you his spirit animal?
I know.
That's right.
Wow. That's different. It's more, like you said, more marshmallowy. It's got more of a sweeter note to it.
Yep.
So this is the second barrel. This one's the one that's going to Bo's in spring. Bo's a phenomenal guy, a veteran. Him and his wife couldn't be nicer people. I hope I can convince them to barrel this unfiltered.
You got to do it.
I think people would love.
Yeah.
Will, I know you're going to watch this. Convince Joe to barrel this raw. Just no filter, raw product. I promise you the stores nor the distributors will reject the product.
Anybody who's drinking barrel proof isn't going to have a problem with that, right?
I wouldn't think
Well, there was a story. I learned this a couple years ago. There was a particular single malt I liked. This is really good, by the way.
Yeah.
There was a particular single malt I liked out of North Carolina that there was sediment in the bottle, and back then the environment was different for whiskey, so stores thought that there was something wrong and would reject the product. Look at me being a professional. Kentucky's calling me.
Ooh.
Let's see here.
It's like the president in the bourbon world.
I know, right?
It's just Kentucky.
I got a Kentucky, the entire state.
I definitely didn't mean to big talk you right now.
Kind of a big deal in the Houston Bourbon Society.
Who's branded in Kentucky?
There was that was the master distiller he doesn't like to be called master distiller, but the head distiller at Copper Kings was branded.
Okay. So guys, the master distiller at Copper Kings is calling me.
Yeah, no big deal.
No big deal. Dude, somehow he got my number. I don't even have him in my phone. I should have answered and been like, who's this?
New phone, who dis?
He was really cool too. I know that we'll get to Copper and Kings, but that he prefers to make wine.
Oh yeah.
That was fascinating.
And I asked a question. Copper and Kings has wine aging in their. I always want to call it a basement. Their cellar.
Their cellar, yeah.
Their cellar. They have
fancier.
She's like the coolest cellar.
That place awesome. Dude. By the way, when we went there the first time with Jordan, they were blaring music. And there's all these subwoofers.
So you were right at home, basically, with that.
Yeah, I could barely hear it. But they were blaring music, and it was the anniversary of the ATM, so everything was all rap music about money. So for my producer, Jack doesn't know this, but Copper and Kings plays music by their barrels to kind of vibrate the wood so that the distillate kind of interacts with the wood more.
I think I did know that.
It's a bit gimmicky, but it makes sense. And it's kind of like a simple solution to the idea, like, let's just vibrate the thing.
Not to mention it makes their job even better. I mean, to be down there with the music playing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was just cool.
Sure.
All the painted barrels. I mean, it's just kind of a really cool. And the smell when we walked in there
it was
too.
incredible.
You want to talk about? So each stop was more hospitable than the last.
Yeah.
And barrel was incredible. Joe Heron at Copper and Kings, which is one of my favorite episodes, the one I had him and Morgan on.
That was a great one.
Were the most hospitable hosts. We got there before the distillery opened. They walked us through. I mean, the owner of the company, who's a little busy, he's not
just a bit,
had time to walk us through, taste us through some things. And there are a couple of products coming out next year from Copper and Kings. They're wide releases. And before the wide releases come, they let us come taste and pick anything we wanted from them. So again, you get to go and you get to taste through carte blanche. And let us pick the Riding with the King, which is something we picked.
Right.
So for those of you who don't know, Copper and Kings has largely been sourced brandy that they have while they're distilling their own and trying to get it up to maturation, we picked something that is 100% Copper and Kings. Let me open this up here.
There were only 4 barrels. Is that right?
4 barrels, I think.
Yeah, so they only had 4 barrels of this Muscat brandy, and I'm going to butcher this. So he said they're Grenache Syrah.
I think that's right.
Grenache Syrah barrels.
Yeah.
Chateau Neuf de Pot blend. Pure. This is just nonsense.
Now you lost me.
So pure Muscat brandy, 100% distilled at Copper and Kings, and King Estate winery casks. Now, what that means is this will be the first time out of this wide release next year we got to pick our favorite barrel, and it was the most fragrant, perfumey.
There was a floral
note. It was insanely aromatic, and it was so unique and definitely cash strength that we couldn't pass it up. So we're going to get an entire barrel of this wide release next year before anyone else gets it.
Which is awesome.
And that's going to be a big barrel as well, right? Wasn't it? It's
300 bottles.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And on top of that, and it's about 6 years old. Mm-hmm. So it spends the first half of its life in bourbon barrels and then the rest in these French barrels. And we're going to get the whole thing for the Houston market. It'll be the first time it's I don't think the label's even done for it yet.
No, they were still working on it.
They're still designing a label for it. So we got to kind of get in under the radar. It was incredible. And then we picked a Phoenix barrel the time before, which was they took an old broken down sherry barrel and used it to fire a fresh new American oak barrel, 60 gallons. They did the same thing this time. Again, it's their classic blend that they use, where it's a mix between sourced and unsourced, and they put it in. They used an ex brewery barrel, an ex beer barrel, and
cherry stout, I believe, is what
used it to create a new barrel, and then we, Phoenix, born a new barrel, born of an old barrel. And we picked that out too. It was incredible.
It was really good. Yeah.
Everything they had was just so complex. I mean, with all these the blending and the different barrels, like it has a lot going on. Yeah. I felt like everything.
What I thought was kind of cool too is, they were talking. So since the distiller was a winemaker, I think he said his whole family made wine and stuff like that. It was interesting to hear him talk about how they use different. They as an American brand, they have kind of more freedom to use different grapes, and they were talking about how they could bring in different grapes and different proportions of them to tweak the flavors to work better with the barrels and stuff like that. And I think it makes some phenomenal products. And I'm probably butchering their exact process because I don't quite remember exactly what he was saying, but it was something along those lines where they were able to just use different varieties of grapes to create these really unique flavor profiles. And that riding with the King barrel that we tried, I mean, that floral note in there. I have this 30-some-year-old Armagnac in my house that's a birth year Armagnac, and it has a very floral note to it as well, and it reminded me almost exactly like that. And at a 6-year-old, for a 6-year-old brandy, it was phenomenal to have something that reminded me of this 30-year-old brandy that I have.
It was just so unique, and that's the tough thing. Like with a bourbon distillery like at Four Roses, you're tasting through slight variances. What we tasted through were so different. We wanted it all.
Yeah.
There was everything was so exceptionally different that we wanted as much of it as possible. It was hard to restrict ourselves. So we got 2 barrels there, and I want a parcel of their Cadillac. What is it? Cadillac Walk.
Cadillac Walk with the tequila finish.
Yeah. So they aged some brandy in a tequila barrel,
which we thought was going to be weird.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be so weird. It was exceptional. It was so unique. A little bit of agave on the back end.
Bit.
You can get a little bit of it, but it wasn't too crazy.
It was all the good things about tequila.
It was all the good things.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. And I mean, even if you're
covered in salt and lime.
No, I mean, even if you weren't a fan of tequila, which I like it, I appreciate it for what it is. Not the flavor profile that I generally go for, but you get just that slight hint of the agave vegetal note at the end that kind of rounded out that whole thing. And again, I think it was their whole process where they're picking the different grapes that kind of play well with that tequila finish, as opposed to just putting something random in a tequila barrel and seeing how it turns out, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it seemed like it was executed with intention, as opposed to, hey, we have these tequila barrels, let's just see what ends up happening. So that was really cool, I thought.
I love the idea of a distillery that's willing to do anything.
Yeah.
And it's something that's I think is the reason, the key to Joe's success is a distillery who's willing to try anything, to explore possibilities.
Regardless of financial cost, which several times he's like, this isn't the best business model, but we're experimenting.
And this turned out like garbage.
I mean, if you've got a little wiggle room to try something, you should try something.
Yeah.
And most barrel programs are very restrictive. You know, like for instance, I love Heaven Hill, but you've got Elijah Craig. That's it.
Yeah.
Give me barrel proof Elijah Craig and give me Henry McKenna picks back.
They used to do those.
They used to do them all the time.
They do the larceny now. They released that larceny, which is what we did.
That was a charity only. That barrel, the barrel proof that was charity only. Then the rest were released to the gift shop, which we picked up.
Yeah. You guys did some damage there.
Yeah. Well, I get it for the social. So I picked up a bottle of larceny barrel proof, and it'll be featured at the social, so people can come and they can taste Kentucky only releases without no additional cost. It's all included. So we always try to get like the really unique stuff for them to try. But Copper and Kings has got this business model of like nothing is not possible. So the barrel program is freaking ridiculous. And if they can, Joe, if you start making wine at all, even on small quantities, we're in.
Yeah.
There was such a huge response last time, and now Bo did an apple brandy pick, and
which everybody loves.
Everybody loves. NASA's done a couple since then. Their gin.
Killer. Yeah.
I mean, the pear brandy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's a place in Houston that did a pear brandy pick.
Really?
Really?
Yeah, I'm not. It was one of the ads that popped up in my feed. So Copper and Kings advertises in market, which is fantastic on Facebook, and it's a place. I think I'll look it up, but there's a few places centrally located in Houston, like in this area, that is carrying this pear brandy pick, and I think it was for a restaurant.
Interesting.
I would love a pear brandy pick.
That's good stuff.
It was phenomenal.
I think you said the stuff in there is pretty old too. Like,
oh yeah, the average age is like 11 or 12 years old.
Something like that. Yeah, for the price point on
what were they
making?
They were making an apple brandy. What were they making when we were there?
Because they were making an apple brandy.
It smelled fantastic.
Yeah. The moment you walked in.
Like someone was baking apple pies.
And what's the name of the neighborhood?
Butchertown. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we were in the heart of Butchertown.
Named Butchertown,
and it smelled like death. Yeah.
But the distillery was, it's very modern.
It's gorgeous.
Joe loves art, music. They entwine all of that.
The art and music aspect of it was just fantastic.
Their visitor center. I mean, even if the great thing is, ladies or gentlemen out there, if your significant other doesn't necessarily like spirits, it's still a good place if you're in Louisville to stop by if they appreciate art, just because it's so cool in there. So I mean, there's something for everybody. It's great, and there's a bar upstairs too where you can get cocktails and really great view of the city. And I don't know, I think it's just a good destination.
Amazing.
Yeah,
everything about it is a nerd's dream. A Willy Wonka chocolate factory.
It is. It's like Willy Wonka
of Louisville, and it's brandy and. It's weird opening. We talked about it, the name of the episode that Joe was on, and I encourage you to go back and listen to Joe's episode of Copper and Kings we did. I think it's called A Madman and basically the idea of proposing a business model to investors to open a brandy facility in the heart of Bourbontown is I almost cussed just to get to write it down, is freaking nuts. So
But I love hearing him talking about his business model, that there was a void there that people don't.
What did he called it?
The brandy market was
exploit
small.
the gap.
Exploit the gap.
And then he said, market the S out of it.
Yeah. Market out of the gap. So explore the gap, market the gap, whatever it was. But essentially he realized that there's this fun and dude, just the couple hours we spent with him, he said we looked for something that wasn't done, that had historical precedence. So there's a sale there, right? And then he goes, when you do that, you've got to have a color.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was talking about the color. You get orange is the color. Nobody's using orange for distilled spirits. Orange is going to be our color, orange and black. And then you market out of the gap. And so he has established a foothold in brandy, and they're doing incredible things. And
there hasn't been a thing of theirs that I've tried that I haven't liked. So the pear brandy, I'll admit, not my favorite flavor profile, but I appreciate it for what it is. But I mean, it's still super unique. It's definitely grown on me. The first time I had it,
brandy,
there's that mid palate of that's like you kind of got to power through the mid palate on that pear brandy for me.
So we did talk about that. It was very divisive.
Yeah. I still really like
either
it,
people loved the pear brandy or they hated the pear brandy. And to me, it tasted like cooked pears.
Oh yeah,
it was so distinctly reminiscent of actual pears that it seemed natural. Did you need something? No, okay.
The distillery was the first time I've had it, so it was nice to get it straight from the barrel, like right into the glass, and I liked it.
I bought one of those, right?
You did?
Yeah. One of those and one of the gins. It just was just the best experience. So I'm gonna have a little rum.
Oh, that sounds like a great idea.
So now, for those of you in HBS, we've talked about this particular rum a ridiculous amount, and that is because there's a company called Stolen that sources rum, sources whiskey too. I'm not a huge fan of their whiskey portfolio as much as I am this particular rum. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just not a huge fan of it. But you're talking 6-year-old Hampton Jamaican rum for $17. I paid $17.50 for these. I've also found them for around $15. I talked to them. The nose is phenomenal. They don't make any money on it. They were trying to create something that would kind of set the hooks in as like a legitimate brand, and they hit it out of the freaking park, man.
It's like a trap. You smell it and it's so sweet.
Oh yeah,
and then it's 123
proof, which is what we set all of our Copper and Kings picks at.
Yeah.
Another great thing about Copper and Kings, you can set your own proof. So we take a little bit of sharpness off the edge. I like the 123 mark.
Yeah.
Down from 130.
Yeah, definitely the touch of water on those. When we were trying them, I tried them with a touch of water, and it definitely helped out. Oh man, this rum!
Yeah, this rum is so phenomenal, and apparently it was talked about when it first came out a couple years ago. But the scene was not what it was.
This has been out for a couple of years.
Yeah, jeez, so this was, I want to say 2015, 2016, 2016.
I like the little bottles as well.
I'm going to say 20. Yeah, so $3.75. It's a half bottle, but it is legitimately just out of this world, fantastic rum. And it was so good through our distributor relationships. I had them transfer. We only had 9 cases left in Houston. As soon as I talked about it, it was gone.
Of course.
I bought. Well, no, not because I said it, but because the group is 4,700 members.
Yeah.
If anyone had said something, it would have sold.
That's true.
But I bought 2 cases of it, and then I feel like I'm being so loud. Remember that last episode I told you I hated how loud I was being. It was so good that I had San Antonio transfer 26. They were sitting on 26 cases.
Wow.
And so as soon as I brought it into Houston,
it's an odd label. I mean, if you wouldn't think, if you don't know,
it's not very presumptuous. It's not you don't. It doesn't really stand out to you. But it is the hidden gem in the rum community here. I'm telling you right now, if you're a rum fan, Stolen Rum, there are about 11 or so cases left, 15 cases, something like that. And but it just hit 2 days ago. And Bose at Ryan's, again, brought in 16 cases. He's killing it up there.
I think it's going to go.
Maybe while I'm up here, I should swing by there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
it's just phenomenal, and it's cheap rum. It's awesome.
This was a nice treat to have in Kentucky after a long day of tasting.
We killed 2 bottles.
Yeah, tasting bourbon. I mean, I love bourbon. It got me into whiskey for sure, and then spirits in general. But it has a lane, and sometimes you want to go outside that lane. And this rum was a nice little treat at the end of it.
Nice little break.
That's why the rum and everything the Copper and Kings do is, I think, so appealing to bourbon drinkers because you get. No, I know we all love bourbon. That's why we're here and why we went. But it's fun tasting these other high proof spirits. Just something completely different.
It's just a phenomenal break. It's a little dessert, a little taste treat.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law always said, little bites like tapas style food restaurants. Just a little taste treat is what we'd call them. It's a nice little palate break. It's a dessert.
There's an interesting
makes a good pina colada.
I'm going to say tire fire flavor, but not in a bad way. No, in there at the end.
That's reminiscent of Coroni.
Right.
So Coroni has that funk of literally like if you were to melt a rubber tire down, but it's a good thing.
Yeah, but not a bad way.
Even though it sounds like an awful thing.
We talk about tobacco and all the things you want to eat, rubber.
Right, rubber, leather.
It's great.
Things like that.
It tastes like an old leather boot covered in molasses.
Yeah.
And be like, but it's a good thing.
Yeah. There was that one, I think Rosewater's Haitian XO that kind of had like a funky, like I want to say like old sock flavor. That was just, but not in a bad way. It was
the old socks that your dad wore on Christmas. When
so it reminds you of family.
Yeah.
Did you see the rum Clement that NASA's doing?
Oh, I'm excited about it.
I'm super excited about it. Yeah.
Agricoles are like one of my new favorite things right now.
They're just
as if I need more bottles in my house, but fortunately,
more hobbies to spend money on.
Yeah, more hobbies to spend money on. But yeah.
So, let's get through this, and then we'll talk about Boone County for a minute. So, Boone County. Let's talk about Boone County. So, late last year, another local group called the Bourbon Hounds of Houston did a barrel pick of Boone County. Boone County is a distillery that definitely seems like they're doing it right. They've got these really great still, really great facility. They didn't spare any expense. They're really giving it their all. But they started with sourced whiskey, which is what most distilleries do. You got to start off with something great. And they've got some 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old MGP bourbon barrels. For those who don't know, Midwestern Grain Products out of Indiana produces some of the most famous whiskey that you've heard of, right? So there's a lot out there from MGP, OKI. I'm blanking on a few.
Whistle-Pig uses the MGP.
Smooth Ambler, Boone County, right?
Some of their MGP stuff is fantastic.
A little bit of it's the rum that's screaming in my head.
High West uses a lot of their rye.
They produce labels or whiskey for several hundred producers.
Yeah.
And in this particular case, we went up there and they've only got maybe a handful of barrels left from MGP. Everything else is their own distillate aging. And it was a rough morning. We had to be there by 9.
Yeah.
I was an hour late.
An hour and a half away from where we were staying in Louisville, too. Yeah. So it was a bit of a drive. I mean, you're pretty much in Cincinnati.
You were gone by then, right?
I was on a plane at that point.
Gorgeous facility. I didn't catch the guy's name.
Yeah, I forget his name.
I know too. Sarah runs, she's who I had been dealing with up to that point. But the owner, one of the owners, is an FBI agent.
Yeah,
and it was very apparent of his military background. Like it was definitely there. He was extremely kind. They were very, very hospitable
passionate about what he's doing for sure. I got that from him. I mean, very excited about everything.
He was also very transparent.
Yes,
he was very transparent. So we get up there. The Bourbon Hounds of Houston did a barrel pick, and with the help of Nathan and John Curran, who's been on the show, they brought the brand to the state. So Boone County got full state distribution because of it, which is an achievement for a group. It is definitely worth noting. And we get up there and we taste through 4.
I think we had 4. Yeah, I think it was 4.
So the process for barrel picks is usually the same. That's where you taste through everything and kind of rule out the things you hate the most and narrow that pool down. This is the first time that we had tasted something and we knew right off the bat what we liked. We didn't go through the discussion. We didn't rule things out that we hated. We just knew that this was the best thing we liked. And as it turns out, it will be 14 years old by the time it's bottled. So 14-year-old MGP bourbon at cask strength at 109 proof. It's 13-year-old now. But we were just blown away by it. Our only concern is the prices have gone up with Boone County because they're running low on stock. They're working on expanding in other states.
Wasn't the Hounds 12 years?
The Hounds is 12 years.
So you have another 2 years on it.
Yeah, but it's not a competition. Age is not everything. But the Hounds pick was a local legend. There's definitely a cultural following locally for that pick. It went very, very fast. About $100 for 12-year-old whiskey, which is pretty common nowadays. Yeah. Although I remember it feeling a little on the high end 3 years ago.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
your threshold of what is an expensive bottle tends to shift a little
through
bit through time as you get involved in this hobby.
What was the one that caught a lot of flack a couple years ago? Magnus.
Oh yeah, the
Magnus,
Joseph
which
Magnus.
I think was 11 year.
Yeah,
10 or 11 year for $100.
Yeah.
So it's getting to that point in the hobby that you end up branching out of that category because bourbon prices have gotten so high. But $100 for 14-year-old is not bad, and it's cask strength bourbon. So and raw for that matter. I mean, I'm excited to get it here. It'll be here. We're waiting to find out some final details whether like to make sure everything goes smoothly. But as of right now, I can tell you that they've got some pretty great juice in those barrels. And I'm glad that we got our hands on it before it was all gone.
One thing I wish, because they were actually distilling when we were there, and they had a bunch of barrels aging in their warehouse, and I think some of them were as old as 2 or 3 years. So they've been distilling for a while. I wish we had a chance to try some of their distillate, because I think it would have been interesting to see what they're working on. I believe they were working on a rye.
Are they?
When we were there. Yeah, if I remember correctly. There was a lot of information shared when we were there. And
I mean, when I say he was transparent, I mean he was transparent.
Yeah.
He told us what they paid for the barrels, the source barrels.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the first time I've ever been to a distillery where the guy was like, oh, yeah, like just like puts everything out there.
Yeah.
And he was extremely transparent.
Yep.
They must know that you're friends with Wade.
How much had rum? I think that actually happened on the trip. I think I had some cast strength one night at the house when we were,
They came up.
breaking balls about something. I think I got a little bit of whiskey that shot through the nose. It tends to happen when you're with a good group. Drinking.
Oh, it was a great group.
Yeah.
I mean, you get 5 or so like-minded individuals together for one purpose, and the camaraderie is just going to flow. I mean, we had a great time. Todd got more and more quieter as the trip went on. So I don't know how Todd feels.
More bourbon as the day goes
Yeah.
on. That's what I'm going to blame. No, it was a great time though.
Yeah, I mean
Dude, your label you made for my Four
the
Roses
label.
barrel,
Yeah.
Yeah, so
it's pretty exceptional.
Yeah.
Todd's like
I'm
our
excited
resident
about that
artist
one.
here with his Photoshop skills. Some of you may have seen on the Bourbon Society some of the pics that he posted throughout the trip that had some little Easter eggs hidden in them there.
Yeah, you have to watch the labels. There's always something hidden.
So my mom has always been a Norman Rockwell guy. And growing up, our house was covered in Norman Rockwell Saturday Evening Post sketches. And my grandfather, who's in his 80s now, but he would always doodle and sketch. And all of his doodles and sketches were very Norman Rockwell-esque.
Oh, cool.
And I don't remember how it came up. We
were talking about pipe tobacco and throwing ideas around. And the Rockwell thing, I feel like was unconnected to that. But I think Brooke actually said Norman Rockwell.
Brooke may have mentioned something about Norman
Rockwell. And I started flipping through and I found that famous self-portrait of Norman Rockwell. And I saw the pipe and I thought right away, that's got to be the one.
Yeah.
So it ended up being Kismet and very well received. And he photoshopped me into it. And it's very much about me, but it's for the whiskey festival. If it was a Bourbon Society official pick, it wouldn't have my face all over it. But
it's a Whiskey Pete pick.
Yeah,
it's a Whiskey Pete pick.
And
yeah,
you're the real life.
Yeah, I'm I'm the real life. This is going to change soon. We'll tell you that later. No one listens to this.
Bleep that out.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I think we try some Boone County. Todd didn't get a chance to try this yet.
You have not tried it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
right.
I rearranged my flight.
Let's do this. Put a little whiskey in there.
Yeah, we got
another rinse.
Yeah.
Because that. So
do the one of not the pick.
The last night when we were sitting around drinking, so Adrian was like cleaning stuff up in between all the F-bombs that he was dropping, which is why he really couldn't be here today.
Because he can't stop saying the F word?
We would have had to bleep everything out. You get a little bit of booze in this
guy. He can't help himself.
And it's just,
it doesn't matter who he's talking to.
Doesn't matter. An old guy with a camera. It doesn't matter. But man, he put like some of my rum in a plastic cup. Yeah, Minnick.
Doesn't matter.
My God, that conversation with Minnick. Man,
I brought up the book. Adrian,
here, give me a little bit.
I
of
haven't read it.
There.
I don't really, don't need that.
Whatever one you want to sacrifice to rinse. I didn't rinse my cup yet. So.
I'm going to taste it before I sacrifice it.
But yeah, so he was cleaning everything up because he had to leave the Airbnb in a good config when you're ready to go.
Sure.
And he gave me this little plastic like sippy cup thing that I poured my rum in, and then the next morning I had some water, as you do, and it basically tasted exactly like this rum because apparently it seeped into the plastic. Yeah. So whoever's drinking out of that next still may be tasting it because that rum is pretty.
That 2-year-old
intense.
is going to be after that sippy cup.
Okay, I hate to pour
That's
this
fine.
out.
So this is, oops.
Whoa, just give me a touch
very
there.
Quickly, 14-year-old
Yeah, there we go.
bourbon from...
Great color on it.
Yeah. Oh, the color's ridiculous. This is basically
It's like almost orange.
A different parcel of Belle Meade. You know, we did a 12-year-old Belle Meade recently. Let me get a different napkin here. So I like Mr. Blonde, but it's definitely more of a softer, lighter version of this. This is much more bold and in your face about it. In fact, this would have been great for a Reservoir Dogs pick.
Oh, yeah. Just as good as I remember.
Still good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
Thank
that.
God. Oof. Oof.
It was a rough morning.
I'm not going to rinse my glass out. I'm just going to see if it tastes like rum. So, 8 barrels, 3 days, 4 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. 3 days.
That's 3 days.
We flew in late Tuesday night. 8 barrels, 3 days. I mean, it was a cram-packed schedule.
And of course,
always
we
exhausting.
just rested during the day after and did no drinking at all.
No.
You guys have no idea how late I was up every single night.
I remember.
I always figured Chris didn't sleep, but I think this trip confirmed.
Well, I've been on night shift for the past
I've been there.
few weeks, so going on a trip, it was just like I can't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're all passed out, and then Chris is texting us like, you should come to the bar. And we're like, well, I thought we were going to sleep.
I thought it was time to sleep.
I went to the bar across from my Airbnb and ordered coffee at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like
Which is kind of a psycho move there.
And then I killed a couple of hookers.
I knew he would show up bright and early, like, we're all beat down.
Yeah.
He's like, no, nothing happened.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I'm not in fact, today I had a nip of rum yesterday, but that was the first time I had any alcohol since our trip.
Yeah.
I've been off it for 5 days.
Same. Yeah.
I just was so tired.
Yeah.
And it was lack of sleep. Had nothing to do with alcohol. There was no hangovers. There was no.
I felt great.
Same for me.
Yeah, I was really more just tired. I mean, literally like 4 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
It's tough to go to sleep when you're up BSing and listening to music.
I feel like Louisville's
whiskey.
Like Vegas.
Yeah.
You can only do maybe 3
Except
days
without all the fun
much.
stuff that make Vegas.
I don't know, man. I'd rather go to Louisville than Vegas. But.
Yeah. In fact, I've been to Vegas once, and I was extremely disappointed. This has, and this will be the last thing I say, and then we'll go because I see Jack waving me on. There's a particular mineral note that I always attribute to certain whiskeys, like a stone, like a limestone. I don't want to say limestone because it's a trigger word, but there's a mineral note of. Do you know what petrichor is?
Yeah, that after the rain,
the way that wet stone smells after it rains. So this has a particular.
I like that.
That is good bourbon.
It is.
That is really good bourbon. Yeah. I'm very happy with that. And of course, what's going to happen is we tasted this, we loved it. It's going to come back here, and people are going to compare it to the hounds.
Yeah.
It's this inherent need to who's better. So even if it wasn't the hounds, even if it was just a store pick or a redneck pick, it doesn't matter. The goal is to be better than what's on the shelf. That's the goal. Now, the secret hope is that it's the best thing that's ever come out of the distillery. But there's no way for you to know that when you don't get to choose barrels. Even in this particular case, what they gave us was 4 samples. Mm-hmm. So we got to go. Guys, thanks so much. That was extremely fast. Yeah. Very well. I mean, thank you so much for coming on. These will be here spaced out over the next 6 months, and we're super excited. And thank you. If the people at the distilleries, Joe, Brandon, all you guys paying attention to this, thank you so much. If you guys watch this, Will, thank you, Joe. The other Joe, thank you. That's it. Cheers.
Cheers.